How you doing, guys? Welcome back to the Food Fight Club. I'm Charlie, your host, and today our video will be entitled 10 Basic Principles of Understanding the Role of the Scapegoat Child. I'm going to don my glasses, and today I got a lot of notes for you, and I'm going to be reading out of a little section of Growing Up as the Scapegoat to Narcissistic Parents by J. Reed, LPCC. J. Reed's got a YouTube channel. I discovered him a while ago, so he's really good. So if you'll have patience with me, I'm just going to see, this might be a little long. I hate to bore you. I hope I won't. But my notes are starting here as, I'm just talking to all you guys out there. And, if you grew up feeling blamed for problems you didn't create, criticized for things you didn't control, called names like dramatic or sensitive, you probably are familiar, or maybe you are the scapegoat in your family. The scapegoat is a role. So this is the number one, not all of importance. I didn't, number them, according to importance. I think they all play a really, important part in recognizing if you're a scapegoat or other people are. But the first one is the scapegoat is a role. It's not, who you are, and you can never, shed that. But the scapegoat child isn't just the one who gets in trouble more. They are the one that the dysfunctional family unconsciously projects its unresolved issues on, like pain, fear, anger, and shame. So this is usually due to one or both parents being narcissistic or emotionally immature or what have you. You're usually singled out for this role due to your perceived capacity for empathy, sensitivity, and truth telling, which are just a few of the characteristics. I like to believe that I was chosen for that role because of my sensitivity, and my ability to kind of like see through the dysfunction or see through injustice. So number two is the scapegoat is the emotional dumping ground for the family and for the narcissist of the family. The narcissist knows just how to project their self-hatred, personal insecurities, and failures onto the scapegoat child. Okay, they're not psychological experts. They just innately know how to do that. By blaming the child, the parent avoids taking responsibility for their own toxic behavior. Okay, so it's all about not taking responsibility for your own shortcomings or what you feel insecure about. It's about putting it on the child that you pick because they have a certain set of characteristics. Forced dieting was my mom's method of operation in this respect because, as I've said before, she had issues with food, bad relationship with food, and she had her own insecurities as a person. So, that was her way of projecting her failure in what she perceived as her failure in not having the body she wanted, and she put that on me. All right. So number three, the scapegoats are truth-tellers, as I said before. They are often the most observant and honest member of the family. They feel deeply, see clearly, and question unfairness. They are also empathetic and often turn out to be the strongest in the family. Not patting myself on the back. These traits, instead of being nurtured and encouraged, are treated as threats. Their emotional honesty disrupts the family system's denial. Their sensitivity shines a light through the cracks in the family system. I kind of wrote that. And so, because they are already cast out, they have less incentive to protect the family's perfect image, which the narcissistic parent finds threatening. Okay. The scapegoat's refusal to go along to get along quietly challenges their control, meaning the parent's control. This will get you labeled as the problem. Oh my God. So, number 4 is chronic self-doubt. So as the narcissist, works on that scapegoat child, they start to have doubts in themselves and their own perception of themselves. And that's what I wrote. As time goes on, being labeled as the problem child can start to build self-doubt in the psyche of the scapegoat child. Basically what I just said. Sorry. A deep-seated belief that they are inherently bad or flawed can take hold and shape how they view themselves and their perception of how the world views them. And so the scapegoat child may start to think, if I would just be a better son or daughter, my mom or dad wouldn't have to be so mean to me. So they just don't understand why they're getting treated the way they're getting treated. Because as a child, you just figure your parents are all knowing and they're doing what they're doing to you because it's the best thing for you. So you don't doubt them, you start doubting yourself. Okay. Number 5, the scapegoat child is isolated. Okay. One of the most common tools narcissists use is called triangulation. This is a high leverage tool they use to manipulate relationships and maintain control. Okay. This usually involves turning the other parent or a sibling or two against them. This ensures the child feels alone in the absence of support within the family system. So if you're having an argument with your mom because she's whatever on your case and she wants to prove her point, she could turn to your father and say, blah, 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 blah. Aren't I right? Aren't I right to say this? Or aren't they wrong for not doing whatever? And they stack the deck in their favor just to maintain control and manipulate you mentally. Okay, yeah. Number 6, the scapegoat child experiences loneliness, unlovability, and hopelessness. Okay. This, really strikes a chord with me. I can tell you this is something I experienced from childhood way up to my mid to late 20s. I don't know exactly when it kind of went away, but I started working on myself and it helped. The psychological dynamics when a narcissistic parent identifies a child to play the role of scapegoat. Okay. So this all has to do with how it builds up to you experiencing loneliness and hopelessness and unlovability. So, number 1, the narcissist starts with a core sense of worthlessness that they cannot bear to acknowledge, and so has to relegate it to their unconscious. Okay, so that's like the first step that the narcissist goes through. Then the narcissist works, again unconsciously, to discover this worthlessness in someone else, usually someone whom they have authority over. Okay. It could be your mom. It could be, your boss. It doesn't matter as long as they have authority over you. The narcissist acts in ways to coercively influence the other person to identify with their cast off feelings of worthiness. Okay. So now we're going to read from the book a little bit. So bear with me. Okay. So the narcissist may overtly or covertly undermine, criticize, invalidate, deride, or otherwise hurt the other person, but in a way designed to get them to believe they deserve to be treated this way. That is, to become the scapegoat. That it is the other person's flawedness that makes it necessary for the narcissist to treat them that way. So it's kind of like a psych job. They they get in your head. Let's see. The child is likely going to learn that getting closer to the narcissist parent brings them no comfort or reassurance. No, the scapegoat child is very much on their own in life, and must find a way to manage the panic, terror, anger, and despair that this cruel fact can evoke in them. And it's funny because I always used to tell my cousins when we were younger, like, and I had no idea what was what was my situation when I was a kid, but I used to tell them, like, I'm doing this without a net. Like I knew and blindly that I didn't have support. I didn't have anything to fall back on. So I just came up with that phrase, like, you know and it fit perfectly. Here we are, 35 years later, and I was right. It's funny how, like, you can say things and not 100% know why you said it, but it fits, and you find that out later. Okay. It can feel like an endless permanent state of being lonely and unloved, from which there is no rescue. The child is biologically programmed to see the narcissistic parent as the only person who can rescue them from this state of utter aloneness, yet feels the utter absence of love, kindness, and care from them. It goes without saying that the narcissistic parent cannot also offer kindness, respect, care, and curiosity while they are using the child to rid themselves of a feeling they cannot tolerate. Unfortunately, the child has to bear the cost of parent putting his or her psychological pathology first. So this, well, I'm going to just read a little paragraph here on hopelessness too. Um, yeah, all right. There is a profound dashing of hopes for the child who suffers narcissistic abuse from a parent. As I mentioned, a child is biologically programmed to be hopeful that his parent will provide him with what he needs to feel securely attached, love him for the separate person he is, and that love he has to offer is valuable to the parent. That the love he has to offer is valuable to the parent. None of these hopes are realized by the scapegoat child to a narcissistic parent. As a result, he faces a hopeless situation, and the feeling that often accompanies hopelessness is despair. So, the scapegoat child may be very accustomed to an inner, often very private, sense of despair at the felt hopelessness of there being no one out there who can offer them the sense of connection they are seeking. Okay, so I had to read that because there was no way I was gonna footnote it and write it. Comes right out of the book, which is an awesome book. Once again, Jay Reed. All right. Um, so when I was a kid, once in a while, maybe when things got too much for me, I would kind of like go into this catatonic state. I would sit on the couch and just look out the window, and I would be sad, and I would be, very on the verge of tears, and I would sit there just quiet, and my mom, like, couldn't understand why I was like that, and it would upset her too, to see me like that. She had no idea what she was doing to me, but this is the way I was feeling, you know, lonely, unlovable, hopeless, and disparity. Like, it's so heavy to go through that as a child. I could never explain it to her what I was feeling. She would ask me what's wrong, but I could never really, I had no words for it. I was just a kid. And I grew up that way until, Somewhere around 26, 27. I remember on my 25th birthday feeling that way, so it was just something. And I had already left the house and been away for 2 years when I was in my 25th birthday. But they were saying, like, oh, he's homesick. No, I was going through like this, maybe like a relief phase where I wasn't subjected to that family system, anymore. And I was like decompressing like a spring. Um, so maybe that was it. I don't know. But like I said before, I started working on myself, started reading some books, and I guess it got like things loosened up, you know. All right, so we'll move on to number 7, which is internalized shame. Okay, the child eventually believes the family's narrative because you hear it so much every day. Mine was that my body was too big. I've failed at making it smaller. I'm not worthy enough. I should feel ashamed of myself, you know. And that, as I was growing up, just got to me. I mean, no child should have to feel like that. Nobody should have to feel like that. Child grows up with a deep-seated feeling of being inherently bad or not enough, regardless of their actual behavior or character. So that's a short paragraph for something that is huge, huge when you're a kid. That's when you should be gaining confidence and, just learning your way around instead of being ashamed of yourself and, kind of shy, even though it's friendly at school. But like, you have this inhibition to just like, you don't count, so you're quiet, you just observe until maybe someone draws you in or, however it goes. But it was like very sad on the inside, very like still and, desolate. I don't know. That's all I could say. Number 8 is the problem child narrative. So, like we said before, you get labeled as the problem child. That's where black sheep comes from. Uh, you get labeled as difficult, rebellious, or mentally unstable. Okay. This narrative served the narcissist or family to discredit the scapegoat child if they ever try to speak out about the family's issues. I mean, some families have bigger issues. Mine wasn't like a very at risk of being very public because it was very private, you know. And I didn't even know what it was, but I just knew something was wrong. So, once in a while I'd speak out about it, or, I got pigeonholed into this role, and it wasn't comfortable, you know. Um, when I was young, I got angry a lot because I never felt heard. It was just always felt like, I didn't count. And it still did up until, whenever I drew the line 3 years ago. Um, Nobody was ever on my side. Okay. I acted out because I thought I could make them see and understand. You raise your voice, you just want to get your point across, and you can't understand how they don't understand what you're saying because you feel like what you're saying is right. Maybe I wasn't right. I don't know. Maybe I could have been handled a different way. Um, my mom would tell me I need a good psychologist, and this was later on in years when I was, an adult. So she thought that it would hurt my feelings, um, but it didn't because I knew where it was coming from. Okay, and that was her. She would tell you things like that just to kind of like get under your skin, but it didn't work on me. She would even sometimes we would argue, and once or twice she threatened to smack me, and I was like, "You're gonna smack me? I'm 50 years old. What are you gonna do? You think I'm afraid of you smacking me now? Come on." So, uh, she talked to me like I was still a kid. I, I would laugh and tell her, "You think I'm afraid?" Which it pissed her off even more. So, mission accomplished. All right. So that was my little experience. Number 9 is also is what my mom used to do. Getting gaslit. The scapegoat child gets gaslit, and uh, their reality is constantly denied. Okay. So if they point out unfair treatment, they're told they are too sensitive, crazy, or remembering it wrong. That was my mother's thing. I didn't say that. This is you don't you're not remembering it right. Um, this erodes the child's trust in their own perceptions. Okay, so trust me, it could really throw you. Um, my mother could be wrong. Okay, argue with you. She'd gaslight you during the argument, confuse you, turn it around like you started it or you were wrong and she was arguing against you, and she would turn herself into the victim, cry to make you feel bad, and wonder, and it would make you wonder if you got it wrong. She would really she was a master at it. Like, we stopped arguing with her because it was just theatrics. We meaning me and my sister most of the time. Yeah, like, I would walk away from some of those arguments and I would be like, what just happened? Because you're in the right. You're trying to argue, your point or whatever, correct her, and she could not be corrected. She would never be corrected. So she would turn it around, and you would walk away like, wow, was I wrong? Did I really? And I would talk to my sister. She'd be like, no, no, she does that. Yeah, okay, yeah, obviously she does. Um, so it's amazing. If you haven't been involved in that, you're lucky. All right. So number 10 is scapegoat children can suffer from a cycle of hypervigilance. Okay. Growing up as a scapegoat child often can lead to a highly developed radar or radar for conflict. Okay. So you can always tell, when something was up, whether it was at home or, at work or at school, you could always pick up like who was pissed off and who had just been through something, or if it was about to happen. It was almost like a intuitive thing. Um, like when you enter a room, like I say, you can feel the tension, or you develop a knack for reading faces or body language. That's important too, because the scapegoat never knows when the next wave of blame or shame is coming. Okay, so you're always like on your toes. They can remain in a permanent state of fight or flight, which can lead to complex trauma, or they call it CPTSD. It's post-traumatic stress disorder, but complex, in adulthood. So when you never know what you're walking into, you have to be on guard. Okay, so that's kind of like my little presentation there on the 10 points of understanding a scapegoat. The last little part is just you got to break the cycle. Okay, you got to uh, well, it takes a while. Like, I started to awake to this whole thing of narcissism and scapegoats like the same time that I started the intuitive eating coaching, because she had brought it up. So it kind of like, stayed on my radar. Um, you have to reclaim your identity from the dysfunctional system you came from. Okay. You got to create boundaries, go low contact or no contact. I've been no contact for 3 years. I'll tell you one day in a video. You have to do some inner child work. You'll have to look it up. I'm not going to go into it here. I don't really know much about it, but I did a little bit of it too, and it really helps. Recover your confidence and your voice, okay? Because you didn't really have that when you were a child. I know I came out of the house when I moved pretty low confidence. I knew I could handle myself out there, but my confidence has gotten a lot better over the last 4 or 5 years. And practice self-love and self-care. So again, you can look into that yourself. It's very easy, simple stuff. So these final points could be a video in themselves. Like I said, it's a lot, but I'm just putting it out there. I'll give you a little direction. So I'm thinking the next video will be the negative effects of restrictive dieting, because there's a lot of those out there that if people knew, and I'm not talking about just like GLP-1s and weight loss drugs. I'm talking about yo-yo dieting for years and years. It could have a lot of, you could be at risk for a lot of health effects. So I'm going to do a little work on that. And hopefully this was not too boring for you guys. I appreciate you watching. I'd really appreciate it. It would help the channel if you gave us a thumbs up, share it with somebody, leave a comment, hit that subscribe button, tap the bell for your notifications, and God willing, be well, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks. Have a great one.